Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We are unfortunately having the issue that our speaker can't get into the event. I've tried sending her the link. We've tried her coming out, back in again, and it's just not working. So if one of you guys has any better ideas, I'm happy to use those, or if not, I will have to say, unfortunately, we won't be doing the event today and we'll reschedule. Does any of you have any other ideas how I can get Anjali into the event at all?
Does she have it on her phone at all?
I don't know, actually. I know she said she's used Zoom loads of times before with loads of different events, and it's always worked. But for whatever reason, the link and the meet that I've sent her doesn't work, and she can't seem to log into Zoom on the website to get the meeting ID in. Yeah. Hello.
Hi. I'm in.
Oh, great.
Aha.
Perfect.
Okay. I'm really confused. I'm sorry. I wasn't looking for your name.
What has happened is that I logged into some other Zoom session, and Zoom seems to have remembered that.
You
have been asking me whether I use different name, and I said I just clicked on the link, but it took that previous login details of somebody else and kept using it, so I never had the chance to log in.
Oh, I see. Oh, I'm so sorry about that confusion there. I'm so sorry, Anjali. Okay, I can kick this event off. Fantastic. Wonderful.
Thank you for your patience and waiting.
Oh, yeah, no problem. Thank you for yours. I'll just make you a co-host, Anjali, so that if you need to, you can obviously share anything you need. That's fine. So welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining our event today. And like I say, apologies for our technical issues at the start, but I'm really pleased that Anjali's managed to make it here after all, which is great. As you know, today's event is as part of the Aspiring Women CTOs group, which is run by RecWorks. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Abby. I'm part of the RecWorks team, and I work with Barry Cranford, who is the founder of the Aspiring Women CTOs. I have the privilege, obviously, of hosting this afternoon's event with Anjali. And for those of you who don't know about us, RecWorks is a tech recruitment company with a massive difference. As a company, we believe that recruitment can really be a force for good in the industry beyond just placing people in jobs. And we have a particular focus on learning, mentoring, and personal development. Obviously, that is what this event is part of as well. We are more than happy to connect people who want to learn or want to share what they know. We see this as giving back to those we've worked with in the past, but also paying it forward to those we hope to work with in the future. One of our other communities, our Meet to Mentor program, has just made our 4,000th introduction, so we're really excited about that. As I've said already, you know, we love to give opportunities for people to connect. So if you want to know about any of our other communities, please do get in touch with myself or Helen Lewis or Barry, and we'll take it from there. Just to let you know as well, today's event will be available on YouTube in a couple of weeks, but also I will put my LinkedIn profile in the chat. So if you want me to send it to you, just connect with me on LinkedIn and I'll be able to do that. With no further ado, I'm going to hand over to Anjali for her talk this afternoon, and we're really looking forward to hearing what you've got to say.
Thank you, Abby. If you could, I need to share my screen. Okay, I hope you can see the screen without notes. Is that right? Okay, fine. So
we can. Sorry, notes are there.
All right, because I've got a screen which has notes and there's a full screen. So I'm hoping I'm sharing the right one.
I don't think you are. Can you is there an easy way to change the screen? If you hit share screen again, it might.
Okay.
You go down to screen. Does it let you choose a different one?
Okay, so if I because the one today is just not my day, I think.
Technology is fun.
I know. Because I thought it would give me an option of which screen to share.
If you right click once you share, there was like a screen option.
Give me a second. So, and I'm not sharing yet. So on share screen, do I have multiple or advanced sharing options? No, it's not giving me dual monitors. I want to share one screen, not the other, but it's.
Yeah.
Okay, let me try. That might work.
Yeah. There's nothing on this one right now.
We can see a desktop. That's a good start.
Okay.
Yeah, there it is.
Perfect.
Finally. Right. Okay, now let me get into the zone. So thank you, Abby, and hello, everyone. I'm very grateful to RecWorks for giving me this opportunity to speak. I met Barry briefly and I spoke with him a couple of times. And one thing I noticed is he is an ally for women in technology. He was extremely sympathetic and he wanted to understand where women come from in technology. So I was very impressed with Barry and I agreed to speak at his events. And then he mentioned to me this community. So it is my pleasure and privilege to address the Aspiring Women CTO community. I'm actually delighted that such a community exists at all because I've struggled myself as a lone woman in technology for quite some time. So having these kind of communities is a delight rather than, it's a delightful surprise for me. Now, before I get into the main topic, let me explain the background to why I chose this topic. I think as technology leaders, especially those who are doing more technical roles, such as myself, everybody thinks we sit in a corner and solve some complex problems. But that's not true. The technology leaders, the technical people, they also need leadership skills, just like any other types of leaders in an organization. Technology is central to any organization and it underpins all functions. It's required everywhere. So these leaders have the challenging task of leading their own cross-functional tech teams, as well as interacting with their cross-functional peers and senior stakeholders inside the organization and outside the organization who are not necessarily from technology. So it is a 360-degree role and it requires a lot of people leadership and people skills. This is something which I had realized sometime back, and I was building my leadership and people skills, which I think I was quite weak in. When I joined Mars, I joined it during 2020 when the lockdown started. So quite unusual time for me to start in such a challenging role. It's also very different to what I had done before. I have always worked with technology product and technology services type of organizations, whereas Mars is an end user organization and one of the largest enterprises in CPG in the world. So it was very challenging. I joined during challenging times. I made a change in the type of role that I had done, and it was quite complex and challenging role. I was leading with my instincts and doing everything based on what I had learned. But I think after a few months down the line, I realized that I need a new framework I need to understand how to work with all the people that I'm interacting with. And hence I did a course on leadership. And I wanted to last year, and I started implementing some of the learnings in my day-to-day operation. It helped me immensely. And hence I wanted to share some of my learnings with you here today. Hence the topic, leading collaboratively and strategically. That's what I learned, a little more than that, but this is what helped me in my day-to-day working. So I thought I'll share some of the learnings with you. So I've kept it very simple. We'll briefly review what the context is, and then how to tailor team decision-making, and also leading strategically to be effective in the new normal. So what is a new normal? VUCA is a concept which I discovered last year, but it was defined quite some time back in the context of US military operations. So and then it was defined theoretically, etc. But if you look at where we live today, it is now well known in more or less all business sectors. We lead, manage, and work in a VUCA context across all sectors, across all functions. And the pandemic has just enforced that VUCA concept across the board, and it has now become the new normal. Now, how does this impact an organization? So as we know, organizations are still set up with top-down hierarchical structures. It's all about hierarchy. There is nothing we can do about it, perhaps not yet. Change will come. But having said that, the decision-making process that we follow doesn't need to follow the traditional hierarchical structure. We can invent, or we can figure out new frameworks to help us work through the VUCA context. And that's what leading collaboratively is about. So new leadership principles, they have to emerge for us to be flexible and act quickly and effectively. One of the core principles of leadership in VUCA environment is collaboration. It's all about working together and being more effective as a team, as opposed to being working as an individual. Leading strategically also has to change in a VUCA context. Strategy used to be a quite a function that used to be done in incubator, etc., and isolated people, a group of people sitting in ivory tower would do strategy. But today that is not the case. Strategic leadership also needs different approach. Okay, so let me share some concepts that I found quite useful about leading collaboratively. This is not course that I'm doing, but I'm just sharing some of the learnings. Now, broadly speaking, there are 4 ways in which good leaders can make bad decisions. I have been guilty of some of them, and now make a conscious effort in avoiding those traps. As I bring those traps up on the screen, just take a moment to reflect. Have you been guilty of any of them? And have you seen them elsewhere, even if you haven't done them? So the first one is misleading experience, believing that current situation is the same as a previous experience, but it is usually not. The risk is that it seems similar. For example, you decide to implement a marketing technology solution that you would have used before in other places. It works in your new place, in new program initially, but after a while, everyone realizes that it is too expensive to maintain. This program doesn't have sufficient budget to operate it. Then you have to go and add more, ask for more investment and put in more effort to bring in another solution that is easier to maintain. So it's misleading experience that previously you had used it, it worked well, but that doesn't mean it will work in every situation. This is something that I used to get caught out with because I had a lot of experience and I used to think I know all and I can keep applying my previous experience to every situation. but nowadays I take a step back and look at every situation as an individual use case before I make that decision. The second one is along the same lines, but slightly different. It's about misleading judgment. Now, what happens here is you're familiar with something that you have used before, maybe a framework, maybe a model, maybe some methods, and you want to use that in all situations. And an example is something like agile methodology. It's very common. It's used in all initiative programs, software development programs, etc. It's a common SDLC method. You're well versed in it, fine, but you come in a different program and where you start applying same agile methodology because it works everywhere. That's what the industry uses everywhere. But what you find is that that particular program has so many complex commercial, what you call dependencies, that agile doesn't work there because you have to resolve those dependencies before you can apply agile there. So you have prejudged it, and that your prejudgment has been wrong because again, it's not valid in the current situation. The next one is actually probably something which I would like to think that I have not been guilty of, but I've seen some other leaders falling prey to it, which is about inappropriate attachment. Now, what does this mean? It's about favoring an option, maybe a person, or again, it can go back to a vendor or something that you want to work with, and you talk of benefits of that person or that vendor or that option. You talk of more than you should. Maybe that person or that particular option is not the best option in this situation, but it's because you want that, you have that attachment, you will push that up. You will not consider other options that may be better than what you have got. And that inappropriate attachment then can cause issues down the line. The fourth one is again something that it's something similar. Again, I would like to think that I'm not guilty of this, but this is about inappropriate self-interest or personal agendas, as we commonly call. There is some benefit, personal benefit for you to derive from this option, and so you will push for it. These are all unconscious biases. They are not necessarily conscious decisions that you make, but nevertheless, you may go ahead and make those decisions, and that will then cause you problems down the line. So that's why, as a leader, you are you're not immune to making bad decisions. That's what is the learning from here. So how do brains decide? When we are presented with a choice, we carefully weigh the alternatives and choose the option that makes the most sense. Is that true? Do we? I think not really. There is a lot of study that goes neuroscience, etc., that tries to find out how do the brains work. And in simple measures, there is that pattern recognition, which, being technologists, we know we are very good in logical thinking, pattern recognition, etc., because we got analytical side of brain, which is very strong, but we are also people, so we got that emotional side of the brain kicking in, and together there are some hardwired processes that sit in our brain, and that's what causes all the unconscious biases that reflect in poor decision making. It's just being a human being, and that's what is. It's not about being a bad person, it's just about being a human being. And if that is the case, then leaders do need a way to make better decisions. We are human beings, we can't get away from it. So we will always fall prey to how brains decide. So they must expose their own biases and assumptions for questioning. That's the only way you will discover your own biases. You have to have a framework that can support a wider, stronger buy-in to your decision making. The decision is still yours, but you need a different framework to make those decisions. So what are the safeguards that you can insert to protect your decision-making process? I think the first one I would say is it's about experience, it's about data and analysis, it's making data-driven or informed decision-making. Every time you make a decision, reanalyze existing data as well as collect and analyze fresh evidence. Familiarize with current situation. You can gain new, you can listen to new advisors or your existing advisors from different backgrounds. You can use provocations to challenge the bias and expose possible emotional attachments, yours and others too. The second one is what is most effective is having a group debate and challenge. I think you can create a group of people that understand the topic to get a wide range of viewpoints. You can set up a board with experts from different areas. Being an architect, my usual first step is to set up what we call an architecture review board or a design review board, solution governance forum, whatever name I call it. And that's what drives all the technical decisions that I make are through these kind of forums rather than me doing them myself. In these kind of groups, you're challenging each other to expose your biases, but also gain from the individual expertise and viewpoints that these individuals bring to the table. There is one challenge there which we will talk about later. It's about when we talk about how to lead collaboratively. The third one, again, being technologist, you would be very familiar about governance. It is having what is governance is about reviewing with experts from relevant fields. You have your own group with whom you make those decisions, but it's always good to go and get whatever decisions you make reviewed by experts who have not been part of your day-to-day working group. You can also review with stakeholders who are going to get impacted by your decision, get their input, discuss alternative options with them or with the experts, and to ensure that the option that you have chosen is the optimum one for the current situation. And finally, of course, this is a feedback loop. So you have to constantly monitor the impact of the decisions that you have made, and that whatever information you gain from that monitoring feedbacks into your next cycle of decision making. So these are the 4 pillars of your decision making that will help you to expose your biases or get over your biases and make good decisions. The thing I would like to, this title I said is leading collaboratively. So I just wanted to highlight a few things about what does it mean to lead collaboratively. So if you go on the Google, or I think some of you might have read books and done courses yourself, there's a lot about collaborative leading. The 3 principles that I found most useful, that's what I would like to highlight here. One is about ensure inclusion. Make sure everyone gets a chance to speak and finish what they want to say. For example, you can have a different technique. I like to speak my thoughts. When thoughts are in my head, I like to get them out. So I don't like interruptions sometimes. Once I start saying, I have to finish my sentence. But that doesn't mean if somebody else wants to say something, I will open the floor to them after I finish saying. Some people make sure that they stop mid-sentence and invite the other person to speak up. It's whichever technique you want to use, just make sure that everybody in your group has given their input on the point that you're discussing. And if they don't, if they are shy, you make sure as leader that you're inviting them to give their comments. They might say no comment, which is fine, but encourage them to speak up and give their input. It's surprising how many points you miss yourself that others can raise, small, big, medium, everything. So I think that encouraging people to speak up and listening to them is extremely important. This is the one that is very difficult. It's a constructive disagreement because this could often lead to conflict. and disagreement, not avoiding it to leading to a conflict. This is the most difficult aspect of collaborative leading. That's what I think, or that's my experience has been. I'm still learning. We'll look at it a little more in detail. But you have to manage, you have to know how to manage disagreement constructively. You may be participating in other debates where you are disagreeing, so that there is a technique to do that. At the same time, as a leader in your group, somebody else may disagree with you or others, and you have to know the technique to manage that. I think that's, and without getting into a conflicting situation. So on both sides of constructive, both sides of disagreement, you have to be able to manage it constructively. This is the most challenging part of my collaborative leadership. I think that's in my experience. The third one that I find is always find a common ground. So yes, everybody is speaking up, you got all the input, maybe there are disagreements, but your job as a leader is to find a common ground. After all the debate that has happened, your job is to find a common ground and move forward. So that summarizing, finding a common ground, that these are the points on which we agree, that kind of helps to give a positive spin to the entire debate that you would be conducting. And in the end, I think the collaborative leaders should not lose sight of the fact that the objective of collaboration is to solve difficult problems and make important decisions in timely manner. We all know that we do not have luxury of time to get all the input that we have. We cannot have paralysis by analysis. So the clock is always ticking. So we have to be able to make good decisions, important decisions, good decisions in timely manner. That is we cannot lose sight of that particular objective in making sure that the debate is managed properly on any point or topic. I did say that I find it very particularly challenging is managing disagreements constructively. Now I've written something here, I prepared these slides some time back, but I don't want to talk about this slide. I want to talk about an experience that I had maybe a few days ago, where on both sides, I said there are both sides of disagreement. One is when you're part of a debate of somebody else is leading and you disagree. I've had that experience. I disagree. Somebody else also disagreed. And that particular person who was organizing the call, that person could not handle those disagreements. I got very upset. It landed up into conflict. The call almost shut down, but then somebody else stepped in and resumed. So there were strong disagreements. And I was, after the call, I was trying to reflect on why things didn't work out, what went wrong. And then I realized that I had fundamental differences and disagreements with this particular organizer all along. And those disagreements never got really resolved. And so it all came out in that call. So what would have been better is to have resolve those fundamental disagreements before getting onto that call. So that is my lesson learned, that that situation should not happen. And now I'm trying to figure out ways to resolve that fundamental disagreement, which is causing all these conflicts, etc., with that person. That's a lesson learned for me. That's what came out. So don't go into a call when there is something, you already know that you disagree with something, and then that will lead to a conflict. On the other hand, I also have somebody else who was going to work in my team, and that person disagreed with things that I was saying. And then I was trying to figure out what to do. And I just thought, let me give this person time and space, find out that, let that person think about the whole situation. And then I asked this person, okay, so what do you want to do? I'll work with you on your terms and conditions. This is the objective that we have to achieve. You tell me how you want to work, then I'll work with you in that manner. And I think after some time, that person said, no, it's cool. We'll work the way you want. I'll work the way you want to work. And it's all hunky-dory. It's going fine. But I had that moment where I was taken aback. I didn't know how to deal with this situation. And I just went quiet for some time. And that helped, that going quiet, giving time and space to each other, and then coming together. And what is binding us is that common objective that both of us are working toward. So I think I'm not perfect, and I'm honestly admitting with honesty that I find this still very difficult, because I'm a person with strong views, and having that managing disagreements constructively is the most challenging aspect of collaborative leading from my perspective. So I'm not going to read what I've written on the slide, because I thought real experiences make it more relevant rather than just some text on the slide. Right, now this is important. This is mine, nobody taught me, I just figured it out, that collaborative leading is not the same as getting consensus. So collaborative leading, whether it's collaborative leading or consensus, everybody's speaking up and contributes. But in collaboration, the majority may not agree with the decision that you make, because as I said, this is about making a decision. In the end, you have to make a decision about that situation, about the 5 options that you have discussed. And not all of them may agree, but that is fine. It is your decision. You own that decision as a leader. When it is consensus, you have to go around the room again and again until majority agree with whatever that decision will be. So that is a fundamental difference in collaboration and working with consensus, that in collaboration, leader makes and owns the decision, whereas in consensus, it is the team that owns the decision. You can go and say, oh, we made this decision as a team, whereas in collaboration, it's your accountability all along. Having said that, whether it's collaboration or consensus, the team supports you, the team works towards a common goal. So I think at no point can you blame the team or hold them accountable for any decision that you make. For me, it was quite a fundamental learning, because often collaboration gets confused with consensus. It's good to have consensus in a collaborative working environment, but you have to realize you may not have that every time, and you still have to make a decision. I think this is the, if this is good for Isaac Newton, this is good for me. This is true for me and for all of us. It's about team. It's, I am an architect, I'm passionate about the work I do, but nowadays I think I'm more and more, it's about the people that I work with. They are more important than the technical solutions and architectures that I put together. It's been a journey for me to understand that it's not about me, it's about the people with whom I work. They are the giants, they are the ones who are supporting me. And if this is what people like Isaac Newton, even Steve Jobs, and there are many people, you would say they have always credited their success to the team that has supported them. And if that is true for them, it definitely is true for people like us, that it's not about us, it's about the people who support us, who do the work for us, and it's because of them that we become the leaders. I think, let me take a pause here. Any questions? Okay. I'm just going to take a sip of water. Right, let me move on to the next section, which is leading strategically. Perhaps you may think that the two topics are very different, but you'll see in the end they connect and how they connect. So introducing a new strategy in an organization, it has some 3 dimensions. The first is strategic thinking. This is where you ideate and you get creative. Strategic thinking is about where you are now to where you want to be in the future with real competitive advantage. This is about what and why. And this is also what we call a left field approach. That's why I've shown the arrow pointing to the left. Strategic thinking is seen as important at all levels. That's what I told you is the difference now from the old school strategic thinking, which used to be an incubator in ivory tower. It's important at all levels. Everyone is encouraged to practice thinking strategically about their function and their own team. And that's what, as a leader, you have to do. It's not only about you, it's about your team and how they become strategic, because only if they are strategic, you become strategic. It's genuinely valued and it's recognized and rewarded. And I think it's strategic thinking doesn't come that easily, and we'll see why the thinking part is not so easy. But in a strategy development, it's not all about strategic thinking. The second dimension, which is equally important, is strategic planning. In an organization, strategic planning is equally important. This will decide how and when your organization will get to where it needs to be from where it is now. So the thinking is about what it needs to do, why it needs to do, whereas the planning is about how it needs to do that and when it can achieve that stage. So it's more about management. I would say it's less about creative thinking, etc., but it's about operationalizing the strategic thinking that you have done. Now, you may think this is it. This is strategic management, thinking, planning. Those are the two dimensions. But there is a third dimension, which I had not realized until I joined Mars and I started working there, is there is a third dimension, and that's about aligning people. So it's extremely important to align people with your strategy, because you may be a great thinker, you may be a great planner, but your strategy is of not much use if you don't align the people of the organization with your thinking and planning. Hence, this becomes the most important pillar in introducing a new strategy in your organization. And as you will see that within collaborative leading and strategic leading, the common element that is, it's about people. So briefly about thinking and planning, how they work in conjunction with each other. Again, you will find there are a lot of courses, books that teach you how to do strategic thinking and strategic planning. I'm just going to cover some principles that I found useful. The approach in strategic thinking, as I said, it's creative, it's divergent, it's analytical. So you're just, it's about dreaming, it's about thinking about visions. That's what it is. You let your mind go in all directions, and that's about thinking. But when you look at strategic planning, it is just the opposite. It's logical, it's about conversion, it's about deduction. It's about, yes, this is your dream, but how can I make it true? Can it be realized, or is it just a dream? So that's why in an organization, you can't be going in all directions. You have to choose a direction in which your organization can follow. But at the same time, if you don't have strategic thinking, then you will keep repeating what you have been doing before. So you need that strategic thinking, the creative thinking, but you also need logical thinking, conversion thinking to make sure that your vision is brought true. When it comes to actions in strategic thinking, it's about listening, it's about learning and analyzing and envisioning a future. Because if you think about strategic thinking, it's not, all of us don't have that eureka movement or the brain waves. We are not that original, but we need to get original. And the way we can get original is by learning from others. And that's why learning from within your own organization, learning what's happening out there, learning what others are doing, that helps you to get your creative juices going sometimes, and think about what is the business use case for your own organization and which of these options will fit there. So that's the vision that you build for your organization. And the strategic planning is a typical management type of actions where you're defining objectives or purpose. You are telling your business stakeholders what they're going to get, what they need, what or what they're going to get, etc. You're prioritizing, planning, you're figuring out KPIs, etc. So that's typical management. This is, and the left side is typical thinking. But they need to work together because it's an iterative process. As I said, strategic thinking, you may come up with 5 options, but you have to then choose the one that is more realistic for your organization. And that's why you may have to go back and forth between thinking and planning before finally you decide, this is my strategy, this is the recommendation that I'm going to go with to the organization, all the stakeholders and people. Okay, so as I said, the thinking and planning, there are a lot of courses, books, and theory there is out there that you are probably well versed with. I won't get into that in too many detail, but the part that impressed me most, and which is something caught me out, was the human side of it. That again, we are dealing with human brains, we are dealing with human beings, and how do the human beings think? They got the logical part and they got the emotional part, and they respond with both. When you are, you have to, they respond with both sides, and you also have to respond yourself, addressing both sides of the brain. So if it is logical side asking questions, then you have collected a lot of evidence during your research and analysis, and you can answer the questions, logical questions, using that evidence. But more, and there is a lot that I'll talk about it in the next slide. It's emotional, and that emotional part is very difficult. How do you address the emotional side, which is beyond any logic? And that emotional resistance that comes up, it's about influencing and inspiring people to line up behind a common objective. So you have to think about what matters for your organization, how can we succeed as an organization. So your organizational values, vision, principles, the culture, everything comes into play, because that's what binds all of us together. That's why we work for any organization as colleagues, because we are 100% behind the vision, the values of our organization. And that's what you have to focus on in inspiring and influencing people when you want them to support your strategy. This is an interesting visual. You can see there are 4 reactions of people to change in any organization, can be grouped under 4 categories. You have a small percentage of passionate people who believe in continuous innovation. They drive change and they challenge the status quo. I'm sure all of you belong in this group and you want to drive change in your organization. The second group of people, but if you can see, that's a very small group of people. So it's not easy, it's not enough for you to have support from people who are already believers in innovation. So you have the next second larger group of people are those who are open to change, but they're unsure. They are very interested in what you're doing. They're sitting on the fence a little bit. You can find in your stakeholder map who are those people who are open for innovation, but maybe they lack that courage to take the next step. Work with them during your strategy development. They become your allies. They are also very open to innovation. So their input is important when you're doing that iteration of planning and thinking. And they bind with you, they become your allies. And their uncertainties get clarified as they work with you. So it's useful to work with them, include in your discussions and all the debates, etc., that you're having. Now they have become your allies. So now you have yourself and maybe a group of people who are 100% behind you, but you have also found some allies. And then you can tackle together the next larger group of people who are very resistant and skeptical. You can join forces with your allies and try to convince as many people as you can from this group. You can engage, you can start early engagements with them, or maybe some of them you can start engagements at a later stage of your strategy development. But you have to connect with those people. Maybe you need a little more evidence, a little more convincing arguments to work with these people. But they will come, they are critical for you, and you have to make sure that they are, you're converting as many as them to come behind your strategy. Always be guided by your stakeholder map. It's you can talk about your strategy. I think I'm passionate, I can talk about my strategy to anybody, but sometimes it is important to focus on your stakeholder map and focus on people who matter the most in terms of adopting your strategy. Having said that, this is not hierarchical. This is flat. This is across 360 degree. You're not focusing on senior stakeholder buy-in. Of course, that happens, but I've kept that out. This, in an organization like Mars, which is big and it works on a principle of mutuality and equality, it's not about just seniority, senior stakeholders. We are all equals, and that equality is important, and that's why it's good to have these conversations with across the organization horizontally rather than just focusing on senior stakeholders. There is a small group of people in the end that usually they are diehard opponents to any change, and usually it is advisable to leave them alone. You can try converting them, but if they're too resistant, then you probably have to respect their point of view and leave them alone. So I think this is something which I was missing in my strategy, leading strategically, because for me, it was all about me. I've got all the thinking, I've got all the planning, I've got all the answers. So why isn't my strategy getting adopted? And the answer was because I was failing to influence people. And that's what I had to learn. And then finally, I think one fine day you suddenly realize that your strategy, that's you, maybe in the first couple, your strategy has become everybody else's strategy. Something that the keywords that you had in your strategy, now everybody is talking about it. And that's a good thing, because then it gets charged with excitement and anticipation, and people just talk about it. Whether everybody understands about it or no, it doesn't matter. It's about that excitement. It is about anticipation, and it's about getting people 100% behind your strategy. That's what matters. It's not about you. It's about your strategy. It's about the people, that you have converted the people, you have broken the barriers, and now they are behind your strategy. That's what a strategic leading is about, successfully multiplying your influence and aligning people behind your strategy. And that's why I would like to close with this section, that as a leader, you must envision the future, passionately believe that you can make a difference, but that's not enough, and inspire people to achieve more than they may ever have dreamed possible. I think that's what summarizes a leader. A leader is always strategic, and that's what who you should be and who you are. So let me summarize quickly. Is what we saw is that complexity combined with rapid pace of change is the new normal. That's what we are living through. Talented individuals working alone is no longer enough. We need to pool the talent. We need a pool of supermen or superwomen. One superman or superwoman is no longer enough. Thinking well together is critical for executives, whether you do that within your team or whether you do it with your peers. That working together, that's critical for success. And multiplying influence is the key to successful strategic leadership. So it's all about people and working together with people. Thank you.
That was brilliant, Anjali. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Yeah, thank you guys for being able to stay, and everyone else who will be watching the recording, thank you for joining us for this meeting. On behalf of RecWorks, it's always a pleasure to have people come and speak on all sorts of topics, but yeah, especially about leading strategically. That's amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today, Anjali, and thank you everyone for coming, and we will hopefully see you at our next event. Like I say, my LinkedIn profile is in the chat if you want to connect, and I can send you the YouTube recording when it's available. Have a great afternoon. Take care.